The first thing you need to understand is this. Reputations don't just break quietly. Sometimes they shatter under the glow of Christmas lights in a Los Angeles storefront window. And that's exactly what happened when Meghan Markle, actress, duchess, global activist, and one of the most talked about women on the planet, woke up to discover that a trendy boutique on Robertson Boulevard had crowned her the villain of the year. Publicly, artistically, and, depending on who you ask, vindicatively. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. But let me ask you something right now. When was the last time you saw a holiday display that sparked more headlines than a royal scandal? When was the last time a Santa hat sparked a global argument? When was the last time a simple window, not a documentary, not an interview, not a memoir, caused this much noise? If your answer is never, you're not alone. Because this isn't just a story about a shop trying to be edgy. It isn't just a quirky LA stunt. And it isn't even just another Meghan Markle controversy. It's bigger. It's stranger. And it tells us something about celebrity culture in 2025 that most people aren't ready to admit. Before we go further, picture this: Robertson Boulevard. A place where celebrities used to gather like moths around flashbulbs. The place where Paris Hilton walked tiny dogs wearing oversized sunglasses. The place where paparazzi hid behind SUVs like wildlife photographers near a watering hole. The place where influencers still go to pretend they are famous. Now picture one store, Kitson, a boutique known for its mix of quirky gifts, paparazzi-friendly storefront, and a long-running tradition of unapologetically calling out celebrities, politicians, and public figures in the most theatrical ways imaginable. Every December, they reveal their annual holiday hypocrisy window display. And every December, somebody gets roasted. But this year was different. Because this year, front and center, wearing a bright red Santa hat with Montecito Diva stitched in bold letters, was Meghan Markle. A mocked-up magazine cover, a glossy smile, a bright headline, a public declaration that she was one of their official 2025 villains. Now pause for a second. Let that sink in. A royal, a duchess, positioned as a holiday villain in the middle of Los Angeles. By a boutique. On a shopping street. It sounds like satire. It feels like a parody of celebrity culture. But for millions of people watching online, it wasn't funny. Or maybe it was. Or maybe it was cruel. Or maybe it was deserved. Or maybe it was none of the above. But isn't that the point? That's what makes this story explosive. Because depending on who you talk to, Meghan has been everything from a role model to a manipulator, an advocate to an opportunist, an underdog to a villain. And this window display, this ridiculous, provocative, ironic window display, became ground zero for yet another cultural fight over her image. So what made this year's display so incendiary? What made this particular choice, Meghan Markle in a Santa hat, detonate across the internet? Part of it has nothing to do with Meghan herself. It's about timing. It's about optics. It's about a cultural moment where LA, the city that usually protects its own, suddenly turned a mirror around and said, no, not this year. But let's slow down. Let's rewind the scene. It's early December. Tourists are wandering up and down Robertson. People are snapping selfies near coffee shops and storefronts. And then someone notices the Kitson window. They take a picture. They post it. The caption is something dramatic like, "No way they did Meghan like this." Or maybe, "LA has had enough." Within hours, the photo spreads. Within a day, it trends. And suddenly you've got two tribes forming online. One side saying, "Finally, someone's calling her out." The other side saying, "This is bullying disguised as holiday cheer." But ask yourself, why would a boutique risk doing this? Why would they risk angering celebrities, customers, fans, and an entire global monarchy-loyal audience? Because Kitson has a history. They've been doing the holiday hypocrisy windows since 2020, and they've never apologized for any of them. Their displays have targeted politicians, activists, performers, athletes, media personalities, pretty much anyone who held some level of public influence and, in their view, some level of hypocrisy. And love them or hate them, they know exactly what they're doing. They court controversy the way some stores court influencers. They stand out in a city obsessed with blending in. But here's the twist. This year wasn't just business as usual. This year struck a nerve. Because when you choose Meghan Markle, you're not just choosing a celebrity. You're choosing a cultural lightning rod. You're choosing someone who embodies the very contradictions people love to argue about: privacy versus publicity, authenticity versus branding, vulnerability versus power. You're choosing someone whose name alone can launch 1,000 opinion pieces. But let's dig deeper. Another reason this display exploded is because it raises one uncomfortable question. Why is LA turning on one of its own? After all, Meghan lives just up the coast in Montecito. She represents the polished, socially conscious, wellness-driven image that California elites love to project. She built her post-royal brand on compassion, empowerment, and modernizing the royal narrative. So why would an LA boutique, in the heart of the celebrity ecosystem, label her the villain of the year? Was it a publicity stunt? A satirical jab? A statement? A warning? Or maybe a reflection of new attitudes inside Hollywood, where more and more people feel that the Meghan story has shifted from inspiration to exhaustion. And here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Because as soon as her image went up, something started happening behind the scenes, quietly, subtly, and very tellingly. Whispers inside Hollywood circles. Influential people saying, "Oh, I'm not touching that." Others saying, "Honestly, I get it." And some, surprisingly, saying nothing at all. Silence is louder than words in this city. But let's not skip ahead. Right now, we're going to sit in this moment. The moment the display first went up, because everything flows from here. Picture the window, glossy magazine mock-ups, bold red lettering, controversial faces from politics and entertainment, and then Meghan. Smiling. Perfect hair. Perfect lighting. Wearing that Santa hat with those two loaded words, Montecito Diva. If you're Meghan's supporter, the display looks like a cheap shot. If you're her critic, it looks like Hollywood finally said what you've been thinking. If you're neutral, it looks like spectacle, a strange, theatrical reminder of how absurd modern celebrity culture can be. But at the heart of it all is one core question. Why is this store calling her a villain? And that is where our investigation truly begins. Because Kitson didn't just randomly throw Meghan's picture up there. They put her in the 2025 villains lineup for specific reasons. Reasons tied to public perception, recent events, contradictions in her public image, and cultural frustration with celebrities who preach one thing and live another. But here's the twist no one expected. This display wasn't just a statement about Meghan. It was a statement about the entire ecosystem around her. The media, the fans, the critics, the industry, and even the royal conversation itself. And if you think that's dramatic, wait until you hear how Hollywood insiders responded. Some were furious, some were entertained, and some, the ones who normally stay silent, quietly whispered that the boutique had merely said out loud what many industry people quietly believe. Now, before we go deeper, let me ask you this. Why does Meghan Markle keep finding herself at the center of these cultural firestorms? Why does every story about her, every interview, every business venture, every photograph ignite an argument? Is it her fault? Is it the media's fault? Is it the public's fault? Or is it something else entirely? Something deeper, something structural, something baked into the way we treat fame in the internet age? Those questions are important because this story isn't just about a Christmas window, and it's not just about a duchess. It's about perception. It's about branding. It's about power. And it's about the strange and sometimes disturbing relationship we've built with celebrities in the 21st century. As we move forward, you'll see that this display opened a door into a larger conversation about why certain public figures get villainized, why others get canonized, and why some get trapped somewhere in between. And Meghan, for better or worse, seems to exist permanently in that in-between space. A paradox, a puzzle. A mirror reflecting how we treat women in power, how we treat public figures who break tradition, how we treat anyone who challenges old systems. But even with all that context, even with all that symbolism, even with all the cultural weight behind this moment, there's still one thing you don't know. One thing that changed the direction of the story. One thing that shifted this from quirky LA display to international headline. Something that happened just days after the display went up. Quietly at first, then explosively, and it's the moment where everything truly begins to unravel. And that is the moment we're heading into next. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The story of Meghan Markle's Villain of the Year crown doesn't start with her. It doesn't even start with a Santa hat. It starts with a small boutique tucked between Beverly Hills and West Hollywood, a store that, over the past 2 decades, became much more than a shop. It became a stage, a provocateur, a lightning rod, a cultural commentator in sequined storefront windows. Kitson is not just a retail store. It is a theater of celebrity, a place where the city's pulse can be measured by the shimmer of mannequins in its windows. Founded in the early 2000s, Kitson began as a concept store with a clear mission: sell what's trendy, sell what's exclusive, sell what will get people talking. Their audience was never just shoppers. It was the cameras that followed stars, the paparazzi that tracked every footstep, the influencers who craved a backdrop to launch their next viral post. Over time, Kitson developed a reputation that was almost mythical. For those outside LA, it looked like a store where rich people bought tote bags. For those inside, it was a theater where the city's elite watched and were watched, a social laboratory where status, fame, and irony collided in glittering displays. And by 2020, Kitson had become infamous not for its products, but for its annual holiday hypocrisy windows, a tradition that would eventually lead to Meghan Markle's controversial inclusion. The first holiday hypocrisy display debuted quietly, almost accidentally, in 2020. Initially, it was meant as a playful critique, a cheeky glance at celebrity culture. But it quickly became apparent that Kitson had found its voice, a voice that could provoke, challenge, and mock simultaneously. Over the years, the displays evolved. They mocked political hypocrisy, called out influencers who preached philanthropy while flaunting extravagance, and lampooned stars whose public image didn't align with their private actions. Every December, the display became a social barometer, a measuring stick for who and what Los Angeles found amusing, annoying, or simply worthy of public shaming. What made Kitson different from other boutiques wasn't just their audacity, it was their intelligence. The team behind these displays understood the mechanics of attention. They knew that social media would amplify every image, every headline, every twist of irony. They knew that controversy sells, but they also understood nuance. They didn't go for cheap shots for the sake of publicity alone. Each display had layers of meaning, a mix of satire, symbolism, and cultural commentary. And every choice, every celebrity included, every headline written, was intentional, designed to spark debate and reflection. When Meghan Markle appeared in the 2025 window, it wasn't happenstance. She was chosen because she was, in many ways, the ultimate symbol of modern celebrity contradiction, loved and criticized, empowered and scrutinized, celebrated and vilified. Kitson didn't just want a face, they wanted a mirror. They wanted to hold up the city and the world to the reflection of its own obsessions, its own hypocrisies, its own narratives about fame, virtue, and image. But to understand why Kitson's choice was so explosive, it's important to understand the boutique's journey. Kitson's founders were savvy observers of celebrity behavior. They understood that Los Angeles was a city obsessed with optics, with perception, with image management. In a town where people's social lives were as carefully curated as their Instagram feeds, Kitson positioned itself as both commentator and participant. Their storefront became a stage where the line between satire and reality blurred, where a shopping trip could feel like stepping into a live social experiment. And Kitson didn't shy away from conflict. Over the years, they developed a reputation for fearlessness, for never backing down from criticism. They lampooned politicians, actors, and influencers alike. They were unapologetic about their choices, even when public outrage bubbled over. And this approach cultivated a following, a community of people who admired boldness, who reveled in social commentary disguised as retail theater, who watched each display with anticipation, waiting for the next cultural bombshell. It was this unique positioning that allowed Kitson to wield influence beyond mere retail. They weren't just selling products. They were shaping conversations. A Kitson display could set the tone for celebrity gossip, social commentary, and viral debates. And by 2025, their Holiday Hypocrisy series had become an annual event that the city, and increasingly the world, watched with bated breath. The inclusion of Meghan Markle in this lineage of critiques was, in some ways, the culmination of years of strategic observation. Kitson didn't select her lightly. They selected her because she was emblematic of the complexities, contradictions, and controversies that define the modern celebrity landscape. She was a polarizing figure who generated conversation, debate, and media coverage, qualities Kitson had long sought to harness in their displays. And yet, the decision to feature Meghan also carried unprecedented risk. Unlike previous subjects, she was a global figure with deep connections, a former member of the British royal family whose image was managed by professionals. Including her in a satirical, mocking display could provoke backlash not just from fans, but from media, insiders, and perhaps even official channels. The stakes were higher, the visibility was unmatched, and the potential for controversy was enormous. This is where the genius of Kitson's approach becomes clear. By situating Meghan in a playful yet provocative context, a mock magazine cover wearing a Santa hat branded Montecito Diva, they tapped into multiple layers of cultural commentary. On one level, it was a critique of celebrity indulgence. On another, it was a playful nod to the contradictions in public perception surrounding Meghan. And on yet another, it was a mirror reflecting society's obsession with categorizing public figures as heroes or villains. The visual choices mattered. The Santa hat was not arbitrary, it was ironic, juxtaposing holiday cheer with the weight of public scrutiny. The headline, Montecito Diva, was sharp, playful, and loaded with meaning. It acknowledged Meghan's affluent lifestyle while simultaneously questioning the narratives around entitlement, image, and influence. Kitson's design team, well-versed in the power of visual storytelling, ensured that every element would spark attention, provoke debate, and amplify engagement. And amplify engagement it did. The moment the display went up, photos circulated online. Social media accounts began dissecting the window, highlighting the details, debating the implications. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as yet another chapter in Meghan Markle's complicated public narrative. Bloggers, influencers, and commentators weighed in, offering interpretations, critiques, and predictions. The display became more than a local spectacle. It became a cultural event. What is remarkable about Kitson's strategy is how calculated it is. They understand that in the age of social media, controversy is currency. Attention, debate, and discourse are as valuable as any product sold in the store. Every reaction, positive, negative, or ambivalent, serves to reinforce their influence and maintain their position as a provocateur in the cultural landscape. By selecting Meghan Markle, they ensured maximum visibility and engagement. But there is also a deeper layer. Kitson's displays do more than provoke. They invite reflection. They ask audiences to question their assumptions about celebrity, privilege, and authenticity. They highlight contradictions between public persona and private reality, between image and behavior. And by doing so, they position themselves not merely as critics, but as curators of cultural conversation, shaping the narratives that dominate public discourse each holiday season. And that is precisely why the 2025 display was so consequential. Kitson had evolved from a boutique to a cultural barometer. By including Meghan Markle, they were not just targeting a celebrity. They were commenting on the dynamics of fame, scrutiny, and societal expectation in an era where every action is amplified, dissected, and judged. It is also why the public reaction was so intense. People recognized the layers, whether consciously or subconsciously. They sensed that this was not a random act of mockery, but a carefully constructed statement about power, perception, and the way society engages with those in the spotlight. And as debates raged online, Kitson's influence expanded far beyond Robertson Boulevard, reaching global audiences and igniting conversations that transcended celebrity gossip. Ultimately, Kitson's rise as a cultural critic is a testament to the power of audacity, vision, and timing. They understood that in Los Angeles, visibility is power, and that the most effective commentary often comes wrapped in spectacle, irony, and humor. Their holiday hypocrisy displays are a masterclass in how to provoke thought, spark debate, and command attention in an age defined by images, social media, and celebrity fascination. And now, with Meghan Markle at the center of their 2025 window, Kitson had reached a new pinnacle of cultural influence. A moment that would define the conversation around celebrity, hypocrisy, and public perception for months to come. But just as Kitson's audacious approach captured attention, it also set the stage for unexpected consequences. Behind the window, beyond the gleaming glass and clever headlines, tensions were mounting. Public reactions, insider whispers, and media speculation were converging into a storm. And what came next would not only test Kitson's instincts, but also challenge the very way Meghan Markle navigates fame, influence, and public scrutiny. Because in the world of celebrity, in the heart of Los Angeles, and in the glare of a holiday display, a single window can spark a wildfire. And when that wildfire is Meghan Markle, no one is safe from the heat. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The first question everyone asks is simple. Why Meghan Markle? Why now? Why her? After all, she's not a politician. She's not someone whose every move directly impacts the masses. And yet, in the 2025 Kitson holiday hypocrisy window, she was front and center, crowned as a villain, wearing a Santa hat that seemed to say more about public perception than any action she had taken. The answer, as always, is complicated. Kitson didn't just wake up one December morning and decide, let's mock Meghan Markle. Every choice in their holiday hypocrisy series is deliberate, and every inclusion is backed by observation, research, and an understanding of cultural currents. Meghan was added because, to Kitson, she embodies a modern paradox, a figure simultaneously admired, scrutinized, and vilified. She is aspirational, controversial, polarizing. She's perfect for a display designed to spark debate. But let's break it down. Kitson has a history of selecting figures who highlight the contradictions of celebrity culture. They don't pick targets lightly. Their goal isn't just to provoke laughter, it's to provoke reflection. And Meghan's public life is full of contradictions. She's celebrated for advocating women's rights, yet criticized for her luxurious lifestyle. She's lauded for honesty in interviews, yet accused of orchestrating narratives for maximum impact. She's a symbol of modernity and independence, yet still a figure tethered to centuries-old institutions. All of this makes her, in Kitson's eyes, an ideal subject for satire. The process begins months before the display goes public. Kitson's creative team monitors headlines, social media trends, celebrity activity, and public reactions. They analyze who is hot in the cultural conversation and whose public image is currently under scrutiny. Meghan's name consistently appeared on their radar. From her philanthropic projects to her media appearances, every move was dissected by fans, critics, and pundits alike. She was everywhere, a perfect storm of visibility and controversy. And then there's the timing factor. In 2025, Meghan had recently been involved in several high-profile events. Her public statements about social issues, her participation in media projects, and even rumors circulating about her personal life all contributed to a narrative that Kitson could leverage. The boutique saw an opportunity to position her in a way that would not only generate attention for their display, but also ignite conversation in media circles far beyond LA. Interestingly, insiders suggest that Kitson didn't rely solely on external media narratives. They also considered the cultural context of Montecito, where Meghan resides. The boutique is acutely aware of how LA's elite perceive wealth, influence, and image. By labeling her a Montecito diva, Kitson tapped into a localized stereotype, the wealthy, polished, and sometimes untouchable celebrity who lives in a world removed from ordinary life. The phrase itself is playful but loaded, simultaneously cheeky and critical. It reflects not only Meghan's public image but also society's fascination with the elite lifestyle and the expectations placed upon those who inhabit it. Yet the decision to include Meghan carried undeniable risk. Unlike local celebrities or public figures with minimal international exposure, Meghan is a global icon. A single display could be scrutinized by millions across social media platforms. There was the potential for backlash, legal challenges, and media firestorms. The creative team at Kitson knew this. And yet, they moved forward. Why? Because the risk is part of the strategy. Controversy ensures attention. Controversy ensures discussion. Controversy ensures relevance. And Kitson thrives on relevance. Another factor influencing Meghan's selection was the narrative of hypocrisy, which lies at the core of the holiday hypocrisy series. Kitson looks for figures whose public messaging conflicts with perceptions of private behavior. Meghan, in the eyes of critics, presents a duality, championing causes publicly while enjoying a lifestyle often perceived as extravagant. Whether fair or not, this perception fits perfectly into Kitson's satirical lens. The boutique didn't need to prove wrongdoing. They only needed to highlight contradictions in public perception, and Meghan's life offered abundant material. Social media analysis also played a role. Kitson's team tracks trends, viral discussions, and fan sentiment. Meghan's name consistently sparked polarized debates. Some people hailed her as courageous, others criticized her as performative. This polarity is gold for Kitson, because the holiday hypocrisy displays are designed to create conversation, not consensus. By featuring someone who evokes strong opinions on both ends, they guarantee that the display will be shared, dissected, and discussed. And then there's the visual factor. Kitson understands that images matter as much as narratives. Meghan's public image, polished, poised, photogenic, provides a strong visual impact. A mocked-up magazine cover featuring her image immediately communicates celebrity status and visibility, allowing viewers to instantly recognize the subject. Add a Santa hat and a bold slogan, and the result is a visually striking, ironic, and instantly shareable tableau. It's also worth noting the influence of Hollywood insiders. Some sources claim that Kitson receives subtle cues from industry networks about which public figures are currently topical or under scrutiny. While there's no official confirmation, the idea that a boutique could gauge cultural momentum to choose subjects makes sense. Meghan Markle's prominence in 2025, both as a celebrity and as a figure of public fascination, made her a natural choice for the display. But Kitson's decision wasn't purely tactical, it was also symbolic. By selecting Meghan, they were sending a message to the public. Even the most polished, socially conscious celebrities are not immune to critique. No matter how well-managed one's image, the public eye can reinterpret actions, statements, and appearances. This message resonates deeply in Los Angeles, a city obsessed with fame, optics, and perception. The selection of Meghan also reflects Kitson's understanding of narrative tension. People are drawn to conflict, contradiction, and drama. Meghan embodies all three. She is simultaneously adored and criticized, celebrated and questioned. By including her in the holiday hypocrisy lineup, Kitson ensured maximum engagement, sparking conversations that extend far beyond the boutique and into international media. There is also an emotional dimension to consider. Kitson's displays are designed to provoke reactions, and Meghan's inclusion achieves that effortlessly. People feel strongly about her, whether positively or negatively. This emotional engagement drives social sharing, media coverage, and public debate. By understanding the emotional stakes, Kitson guarantees that their display will resonate with audiences on multiple levels, visually, intellectually, and emotionally. Yet, despite the careful planning, some elements of unpredictability remain. The public's response can never be fully anticipated. Will fans defend her passionately? Will critics seize the moment for ridicule? Will the broader media frame it as playful satire or mean-spirited mockery? These uncertainties add tension to the story, making the eventual fallout all the more compelling. Kitson's team also considered context. They knew that December is a peak season for visibility, when holiday shoppers, tourists, and media attention converge. Placing Meghan's image in the window at this time maximizes exposure. The combination of timing, location, and subject creates the perfect conditions for virality. Finally, it's important to note that the decision was part of a larger tradition. Kitson's Holiday Hypocrisy series has always targeted figures at the intersection of influence and perception. Meghan fits this profile perfectly. She is prominent, influential, and polarizing, a trifecta that guarantees attention. In the boutique's eyes, she represents a modern archetype of public contradiction, making her an ideal subject for critique. So why Meghan Markle? Because she is visible, controversial, aspirational, and paradoxical. Because she embodies the contradictions of celebrity, public image, and social expectation. Because she guarantees discussion, debate, and emotional engagement. And because, in the eyes of Kitson, she is exactly the type of figure whose inclusion will ensure that their display achieves its ultimate purpose: sparking conversation, capturing attention, and reflecting the complexities of modern fame. And yet, even with all these factors considered, the decision to feature Meghan was not without consequences. The moment the display went public, reactions flooded in from all directions: social media, traditional media, fans, critics, and insiders alike. Some praised Kitson's audacity, some condemned it, and some were stunned into silence, unsure how to process the spectacle before them. And that is where the story begins to pivot. Because Kitson's selection of Meghan Markle set the stage not only for public debate, but for internal machinations, behind-the-scenes maneuvering, and reactions that would ripple through Hollywood, Montecito, and beyond. But what came next would not only test the boutique's instincts, but would also reveal something deeper about Meghan Markle, celebrity culture, and the volatile interplay between perception and reality, and no one saw it coming. It was early December when the window went up. Robertson Boulevard, lined with the glittering lights of the holiday season, suddenly became a stage for one of the most audacious cultural statements of the year. Passers-by stopped. Tourists pulled out phones. Social media feeds began to buzz almost immediately. And at the center of it all, like a carefully placed chess piece, was Meghan Markle. The visual itself was deceptively simple. A mocked-up magazine cover featuring her image, her signature poised smile, and a striking red Santa hat. Across the hat, in bold letters, the words Montecito Diva gleamed. The placement was meticulous, the typography intentionally playful yet sharp, and the colors were classic holiday, but with a biting undertone. Every design element served a purpose: to catch the eye, provoke emotion, and communicate a narrative without a single spoken word. But the genius, and the controversy, lay in the details. Kitson's design team understood the power of visual symbolism. The Santa hat, for instance, was not just a festive accessory. It carried layers of meaning. Santa is universally associated with generosity, warmth, and celebration, qualities that contrast sharply with the label villain. The irony is unmistakable. In one glance, the viewer is forced to reconcile the cheerful holiday imagery with the critical messaging beneath it. This juxtaposition creates cognitive dissonance, an emotional spike that makes the display memorable, shareable, and deeply discussed. Then there's the Montecito Diva branding. On the surface, it's playful, almost tongue-in-cheek. But the implications run deeper. Montecito, after all, is synonymous with wealth, exclusivity, and a kind of polished perfection. By calling Meghan a diva, Kitson simultaneously acknowledges her social standing while implying aloofness, entitlement, or a disconnect from everyday life. The phrase is loaded with cultural connotations, subtle enough to invite discussion, but clear enough to provoke reactions. And the magazine mock-up wasn't arbitrary either. It mirrored the format of celebrity glossies that Meghan herself has been featured in countless times. The irony of using the very aesthetic she inhabits as a platform for critique was intentional, a meta-commentary on fame, perception, and media construction. The boutique was holding up a mirror to celebrity culture itself, and Meghan, willingly or not, became the reflection. Pedestrians who encountered the display had immediate reactions. Some laughed, recognizing the satire. Others paused, confused or offended. Tourists stopped for photos, unknowingly contributing to the virality of the moment. Social media exploded almost instantly. Hashtags referencing the window began trending. Memes circulated. Comment threads ignited debates. The boutique's reach extended far beyond Robertson Boulevard. Suddenly, Kitson was dominating conversations around celebrity culture on a global scale. Yet the reactions weren't uniform. Fans of Meghan were quick to defend her. They criticized the display as mean-spirited, unnecessarily harsh, or even a form of public bullying. Some argued that the boutique had crossed a line, turning playful satire into personal attack. Critics, on the other hand, praised Kitson's audacity, framing the window as a clever critique of perceived contradictions in Meghan's public persona. And in between these extremes, many were simply fascinated, intrigued by the creativity, the symbolism, and the sheer boldness of the presentation. What made the display even more compelling was the way it leveraged visual storytelling. Every element was intentional. Meghan's posture, her expression, the composition of the mock magazine, the background, the lighting. Each choice communicated a narrative, adding nuance and depth to what could have been dismissed as mere parody. Kitson knew that in a city obsessed with appearances, the right image could ignite far more discussion than any headline or article. Behind the scenes, the creative process was meticulous. Designers, marketers, and cultural commentators collaborated to ensure that the display would resonate on multiple levels. They debated phrasing, experimented with colors, tested visual angles, and analyzed public perception. Nothing was left to chance. Every pixel, every letter, every prop was chosen with an understanding of both aesthetic impact and psychological effect. The display also played with the audience's expectations. People expect holiday windows to be cheerful, nostalgic, and safe. By subverting this expectation, using holiday imagery to deliver critique, Kitson created a tension that heightened engagement. The contrast between the traditional warmth of the season and the sharp critique embedded in the display made it more memorable, more shareable, and more likely to generate discussion. Moreover, Kitson leveraged the power of social proof. By including Meghan alongside other villains from various sectors, politics, entertainment, and activism, the boutique suggested a hierarchy of cultural scrutiny. This placement implied that Meghan, like the others, was worthy of reflection, critique, and conversation. It elevated the display from a simple parody to a curated commentary on public perception, status, and influence. The reactions from media outlets were immediate and intense. Entertainment news, lifestyle blogs, and social media accounts dissected every element of the window. Commentators debated whether the display was fair, ethical, or simply clever. Headlines ranged from playful to accusatory, framing the story in a way that amplified Kitson's impact. The boutique's intention had been to provoke thought and engagement, and the response exceeded even their expectations. Interestingly, some of the most impactful reactions came from those who had never set foot on Robertson Boulevard. Online audiences were captivated by the juxtaposition of festive cheer and pointed critique. They shared images, created memes, and participated in debates, extending the reach of the display far beyond Los Angeles. In this way, Kitson had harnessed the power of digital culture, turning a physical window into a global conversation starter. The display also sparked discussion about the nature of celebrity critique. Is it fair to mock public figures for perceived contradictions in their image? Does satire hold value when it's targeted at individuals with immense influence and resources? Kitson's window became a case study in these questions, forcing audiences to confront their own assumptions about fame, responsibility, and public perception. But beyond the symbolism, the visual impact was undeniable. Meghan's image commanded attention. The red Santa hat contrasted sharply with the surrounding holiday decor, drawing the eye immediately. Her poised smile and familiar expression created a sense of recognition, establishing an instant connection with viewers. And the slogan, concise and provocative, delivered the message in a single, unforgettable line. Even for casual observers, the display was hard to ignore. Its strategic placement at eye level, combined with the reflective glass and carefully curated lighting, ensured maximum visibility. Pedestrians, tourists, and drivers alike were compelled to stop, look, and engage. The boutique had created an installation that functioned both as art and commentary, blending visual impact with social critique. And yet, for all its precision, the display carried an element of unpredictability. Public perception is never fully controllable. Some viewers interpreted the window as humorous, others found it offensive. Some saw it as clever cultural commentary, others saw it as a personal attack. The ambiguity amplified the conversation, fueling debate and ensuring that Kitson remained at the center of attention long after the display's unveiling. Moreover, the window raised questions about privilege, influence, and scrutiny. Meghan Markle, a figure of immense visibility and wealth, was being evaluated through a lens that blended humor, critique, and symbolism. The display invited viewers to consider how society judges public figures, whether the critique was deserved, exaggerated, or reflective of broader cultural dynamics. By the end of the first day, the display had achieved what Kitson intended. It had captured attention, sparked conversation, and generated emotional engagement. Social media metrics soared. News outlets circulated images and analysis. Pedestrians discussed it in real time. And at the center of it all was Meghan, a figure whose very presence commanded fascination, controversy, and debate. And yet, even as the public engagement reached its peak, something subtle began to unfold. Whispers in Hollywood circles suggested that the display had unintended consequences. Insiders speculated about private reactions, media strategy implications, and potential reputational fallout. While Kitson had anticipated controversy, the layers of response, both predictable and unforeseen, added complexity to the story. This is where the narrative begins to pivot. The display itself was a carefully constructed commentary, but the reactions it generated revealed deeper truths about celebrity, perception, and societal expectation. Meghan's inclusion had opened a door that led to conversations far more intricate, emotionally charged, and consequential than a simple holiday window could suggest. And that's where we arrive at the cliffhanger moment. The window was just the beginning. Behind the public spectacle, conversations were unfolding, decisions were being made, and strategies were shifting. The story of Meghan as a villain had only just begun, and the next chapter would reveal how the public, the media, and Meghan herself would respond to this unprecedented act of cultural critique. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Almost as soon as social media erupted, traditional media followed. The Kitson display had done more than provoke pedestrians and online audiences. It had created a news story. And as anyone familiar with celebrity culture knows, once the mainstream press enters the conversation, the stakes increase exponentially. Headlines across outlets around the world began appearing within hours. Meghan Markle named Villain of the Year in LA holiday display, ran in entertainment sections. Kitson mocks Duchess in Christmas window, appeared in tabloids. International outlets framed the story for audiences who might never set foot on Robertson Boulevard, providing context, commentary, and speculation. The window, once a local spectacle, had transformed into a global headline. The media's approach was multifaceted. Some outlets focused on the satire itself, framing the display as cheeky, ironic, or tongue-in-cheek. They described the visual details. The Santa hat, the bold Montecito Diva slogan, the glossy magazine-style mock-up. Critics and columnists debated whether it was a clever commentary on celebrity culture or an unnecessary attack on a public figure. These pieces highlighted Kitson's long-standing holiday hypocrisy tradition, contextualizing Meghan's inclusion within years of similar critiques targeting other celebrities and public figures. Other outlets, however, approached the story from a more critical angle. Opinion writers, culture commentators, and pundits asked whether Kitson had crossed a line. Was this satire or bullying? Could a boutique ethically label a global public figure a villain for their personal choices and public persona? Some pieces emphasized the gendered dimensions of criticism, noting that women in high-visibility roles often receive harsher judgment than their male counterparts. Meghan's inclusion was framed not just as a critique of her personal actions, but as a reflection of broader societal tendencies to scrutinize, control, and question the behavior of women in power. Satirical and lifestyle outlets added another layer, blending humor with commentary. Some mocked the absurdity of a boutique window, sparking a global debate. Memes, GIFs, and humorous think pieces amplified the story, ensuring it spread beyond traditional audiences. Lists appeared online. Other villains that could have been featured, top reactions to Meghan's Santa hat, and how Kitson's window redefines celebrity critique. The media ecosystem had become a feedback loop, with each outlet amplifying, interpreting, and reacting to both Kitson and the public's response. Television also joined the frenzy. Entertainment news programs aired segments showcasing images of the display, interviewing cultural commentators, and reading public reactions from social media. Panel discussions often devolved into debates over the fairness of the critique, Meghan's public image, and the broader implications of celebrity scrutiny. These televised conversations gave the story a tangible presence, further cementing it as a moment of cultural significance. Radio and podcasts amplified the discourse even further. Hosts dissected the visual details of the display, speculated on Kitson's intentions, and debated Meghan's public persona. Listeners called in with passionate opinions, both defending and criticizing her. The conversation moved beyond the image itself, touching on issues of privilege, media manipulation, and the dynamics of fame in a hyper-connected world. In this way, Kitson's window had become more than a local curiosity. It was a case study in the intersection of celebrity, media, and public perception. Some publications focused on Kitson's methodology. Analysts described the boutique's long history of holiday hypocrisy displays, noting their ability to spark debate, manipulate cultural narratives, and position themselves as provocateurs within LA's celebrity ecosystem. Kitson was portrayed not merely as a store, but as a cultural commentator, blending visual storytelling, satire, and social insight. These stories highlighted the boutique's understanding of timing, visual impact, and narrative, emphasizing how the Meghan Markle inclusion was a calculated move rather than a spontaneous joke. Yet, as coverage intensified, so did scrutiny. Critics questioned the ethics of labeling a public figure a villain, especially someone whose life is so heavily mediated. Commentators debated the responsibility of media outlets to contextualize satire, noting that Kitson's window blurred lines between critique, humor, and perceived personal attack. Discussions about consent, public scrutiny, and media responsibility emerged, revealing the complexities of modern celebrity culture in the digital age. International media coverage added yet another layer. Outlets in the UK, Europe, and beyond framed the story within the context of Meghan Markle's royal history, noting the contrast between her time in the British royal family and her current life in Montecito. The narrative often included references to past controversies, interviews, and public appearances, suggesting that the boutique's satire had tapped into long-standing public fascination and scrutiny surrounding Meghan. By combining the LA spectacle with global context, these reports amplified the impact of Kitson's display, reinforcing Meghan's position as a polarizing figure across multiple cultural landscapes. The intensity of coverage also brought legal and PR experts into the conversation. Analysts speculated on whether the display could have reputational consequences for Meghan or whether it would influence her media strategy. Some suggested that her team might respond, directly or indirectly, to mitigate potential backlash. Others argued that the publicity, while controversial, could reinforce her visibility and cultural relevance, a phenomenon not uncommon in the media ecosystem, where controversy often translates into sustained attention. What emerged from this media frenzy was a multi-layered narrative. The window was no longer simply a visual joke. It had become a symbol of cultural conversation, a catalyst for discussion about fame, scrutiny, privilege, gender dynamics, and media strategy. Meghan's inclusion was interpreted in dozens of ways simultaneously, as satire, criticism, commentary, and spectacle. Each interpretation fed into the others, creating a complex, evolving story that defied simple categorization. Publications also noted the role of audience engagement in shaping the story. Social media interactions, likes, shares, comments, and memes were cited as evidence of the window's impact. Analysts highlighted how Kitson leveraged both physical visibility and digital amplification to transform a boutique display into a cultural phenomenon. In this way, the media itself became a participant in the story, further extending the reach and significance of the event. Amid all this coverage, another factor became apparent: the display's ability to polarize opinion. Audiences were divided along lines of fandom, ideology, gender, and cultural context. The polarizing nature of Meghan's public image amplified the reach of the media conversation, ensuring that the story maintained momentum long after the initial unveiling. Kitson had created not just a visual critique, but a cultural catalyst, forcing reflection, debate, and engagement across multiple platforms and communities. And yet, as mainstream media coverage peaked, subtle undercurrents began to emerge. Reports surfaced about private conversations between industry insiders, publicists, and celebrity strategists. The narrative was no longer confined to public opinion. It was moving behind the scenes, influencing decisions, reactions, and strategies in ways that were invisible to most audiences. These whispers hinted that the display had consequences beyond social media, meme culture, and news headlines. This is the critical pivot in the story. Kitson's window had achieved its immediate goal: global attention, public discourse, and emotional engagement. But the next phase would reveal the ripple effects of this cultural act. Public attention, media coverage, and viral discourse were only the surface. Beneath it lay strategic considerations, reputation management, and consequences that would shape Meghan's narrative in ways few anticipated. And that's where the cliffhanger comes in. The media frenzy had set the stage, but it was only the beginning. Behind the headlines, behind the memes, behind the viral posts, private decisions were being made that would escalate the story in unexpected ways, creating a new chapter in Meghan Markle's complex public journey. But what came next would test the limits of public opinion, celebrity influence, and media strategy, and no one saw it coming. Once social media and mainstream media had exploded, it was inevitable that other celebrities would weigh in. In the world of Hollywood and high-profile public figures, nothing exists in a vacuum. Word travels fast, opinions spread faster, and every action invites commentary, particularly when it involves someone as polarizing as Meghan Markle. The Kitson display had created not only a global conversation, but also a ripple effect across celebrity circles, prompting reactions from friends, foes, and even figures with royal connections. The first responses came from friends within Meghan's Hollywood network. These allies were quick to voice support on social media. Some used humor, posting memes that turned the Montecito Diva label into playful jokes. Others were more serious, emphasizing Meghan's philanthropic work, advocacy for women and children, and commitment to social causes. The tone was protective. Meghan had been publicly scrutinized for years, and the display, some argued, was an unfair attack on her personal and professional image. A handful of celebrities took a subtler approach, offering what could be interpreted as indirect commentary. Tweets, Instagram stories, or cryptic messages hinted at solidarity without directly mentioning the Kitson display. This indirect method allowed them to support Meghan while maintaining their own public personas. Some noted the absurdity of celebrity culture, using the opportunity to highlight the pressure and judgment that comes with visibility. Not all reactions were supportive, however. Critics and rivals seized the moment to comment on Meghan's public persona. Some pointed out perceived contradictions between her advocacy and her lifestyle, echoing the critique embedded in Kitson's display. In interviews, a few celebrities used the opportunity to discuss broader issues of celebrity culture, privilege, and public perception, subtly weaving Meghan's situation into their commentary. These reactions added tension to the narrative, creating a dynamic where public support, criticism, and curiosity collided in real time. Royal connections added another layer entirely. While members of the British royal family are typically silent on controversies involving private citizens or former royals, insiders suggested that Meghan's inclusion in the display sparked behind-the-scenes discussions. Sources hinted at private conversations about public perception, media strategy, and the optics of the situation. Whether anyone from the palace would make a public statement remained uncertain, but the very fact that royalty could be indirectly involved elevated the stakes of the display. Meanwhile, international celebrities weighed in from across the globe. Some were fascinated by the audacity of a small LA boutique generating such massive attention. Others framed Meghan's villain status as an example of the pitfalls of celebrity culture, noting how visibility, scrutiny, and public judgment often collide in unpredictable ways. In interviews, podcasts, and social media posts, these celebrities analyzed the display, sparking debates about fairness, satire, and the balance between critique and harassment. Comedians and satirists, unsurprisingly, jumped at the opportunity to comment. Late-night shows, online sketches, and satirical articles referenced the Santa hat and Montecito Diva slogan, creating content that amplified the story further. Their humor often highlighted the absurdity of the situation, a small boutique creating headlines that reached across continents. This comedic framing softened some criticism while increasing visibility, turning Meghan's inclusion into both a serious conversation and a cultural punchline. Even fashion and lifestyle influencers joined the discourse. Some praised Kitson for its visual storytelling and bold creativity. Others critiqued the ethics of labeling a person a villain during the holiday season. These voices, often focused on aesthetics, style, and public image, provided additional commentary on the visual and symbolic elements of the display. The Santa hat, the typography, and Meghan's pose were analyzed in detail, turning the window into a case study in celebrity imagery and design impact. Interestingly, the reactions also included a layer of generational divide. Younger audiences, particularly Gen Z, were more likely to engage humorously or critically on social media, turning memes and commentary into viral content. Older audiences often engaged through opinion pieces, Facebook debates, or mainstream news discussions. This split illustrated how the display resonated differently across demographics, showing that Kitson's creation had both mass appeal and nuanced impact depending on the audience. There was also a gendered dimension in the responses. Female celebrities were more likely to defend Meghan, discussing issues of scrutiny, expectations, and societal judgment. Male celebrities were split. Some defended her, others treated it as an amusing commentary, and a few critiqued her actions or public messaging. These gender dynamics added depth to the public conversation, highlighting how perceptions of leadership, fame, and persona are filtered through societal lenses. Perhaps most intriguing were the subtle power plays behind the scenes. Agents, publicists, and media strategists closely monitored the situation, advising clients on whether to engage publicly, comment subtly, or remain silent. The display had created a high-stakes environment, and every reaction carried potential consequences, professionally, socially, and culturally. Meghan's allies and critics alike recognized that the window wasn't just a joke. It was a strategic cultural moment with implications for reputation management and influence. Even charitable organizations and professional networks associated with Meghan weighed in quietly, issuing statements of support, emphasizing her philanthropic initiatives, and subtly contextualizing the display. While these reactions were less visible, they reflected a broader network of relationships and influence that extended far beyond Hollywood gossip or social media debates. And of course, the fans themselves became part of the story. Organized groups rallied online, amplifying support or criticism depending on their stance. Some created digital campaigns defending Meghan, others satirized the villain label further, and many simply engaged in passionate debates. The public had become a participant, transforming Kitson's visual critique into a living, evolving cultural event. What emerged from these celebrity reactions was a complex ecosystem of opinion, interpretation, and influence. Allies, critics, comedians, satirists, royal insiders, media strategists, and fans all became intertwined in the narrative. The display was no longer a local event. It was a cultural phenomenon with global reach, shaped not only by Kitson's intentions, but also by the reactions it provoked at every level. And yet, amid the attention, a subtle tension persisted. Behind the jokes, memes, and supportive posts, questions lingered. How would Meghan herself respond? Would she ignore the window, issue a statement, or allow her team to strategize a controlled media response? The uncertainty added suspense to the unfolding narrative, creating a sense of anticipation for the next act. It was clear that the celebrity reactions had escalated the story to a new level. The display had done more than provoke conversation. It had triggered a web of interactions, opinions, and calculations that extended far beyond Kitson's storefront. Every mention, every post, and every commentary amplified Meghan's presence in the public consciousness, reinforcing her status as a figure of fascination, debate, and scrutiny. And so, the cliffhanger emerges. The celebrity reactions, both public and private, had set the stage for an unprecedented turn. Meghan Markle's response, or lack thereof, would determine how the story evolved, how media coverage intensified, and how Kitson's bold critique would reverberate across Hollywood, Montecito, and beyond. But what came next would shift the narrative in ways nobody expected, and it would challenge perceptions, alliances, and public opinion simultaneously. After the initial social media frenzy, media coverage, and celebrity reactions, all eyes turned toward Meghan Markle's team. In the world of celebrity culture, PR response is as critical as the event itself. A single comment, statement, or strategic silence can shift narratives, control perception, and even turn criticism into advantage. Kitson's display, with its bold Montecito diva label and satirical imagery, had created a situation that required careful navigation, and Meghan's team was ready to act. The first question anyone asked was, would Meghan respond at all? Public figures have historically taken different approaches to satire and critique. Some choose silence, allowing controversies to burn out quickly. Others respond directly, issuing statements, interviews, or social media posts. In Meghan's case, her team carefully weighed the pros and cons of each approach. Silence was tempting. By not engaging, Meghan could deny Kitson the attention she might provide with a response. Silence can also position a celebrity as above pettiness, immune to public jabs. Yet, silence carries risk. In the court of public opinion, absence can be interpreted as guilt, agreement, or weakness. Meghan's team recognized that simply ignoring the display might allow critics to dominate the narrative, shaping the story without input from her side. Ultimately, a strategic combination of selective engagement and narrative control was chosen. Meghan's team began a subtle media campaign, carefully designed to reframe the conversation without directly confronting Kitson or the Montecito Diva label. Press releases highlighted her charitable initiatives, recent advocacy work, and public appearances. Headlines emphasizing her philanthropy, support for women's rights, and community involvement began appearing in international media. The objective was clear: shift the conversation from satire and mockery to accomplishments and values. At the same time, her team worked behind the scenes to manage public perception on social media. Posts from official channels highlighted charitable events, spotlighted her professional achievements, and subtly reinforced a message of resilience and purpose. While the display itself was never directly mentioned, the strategy created a counter-narrative, allowing supporters to engage with positive framing while critics' attention remained focused on the satire. Legal considerations were also part of the PR strategy. Meghan's advisors reviewed the display, its messaging, and its public impact to ensure that it didn't violate copyright or defamation laws. While satire is generally protected under U.S. law, the team needed to anticipate any potential fallout, including media misinterpretation or misrepresentation that could escalate the story further.